Chair Caribbean, we're
Yes. We on?
on. We're on.
Good morning and welcome to Community Development Block Grant Advisory Committee special meeting for fiscal year 2022-23, today March 7, 2022. Roll call, please.
Committee members Armenian,
Present.
Avedisian,
Present.
Gazarian is absent. Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielian,
Here.
and Chair Caribbean.
Here. Just to help slow the transmission of the COVID-19 and protect the health and safety of the community, City Council as well as Board of Commission and meetings will continue to be closed to the public or in-person audience. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes to participate social distancing. Meetings are broadcasted on live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable Channel 6 and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's website, glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called Screenweaver and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. For public comments and questions during the meeting, call 818-937-8100. Public comments on a specific agenda item will be taken when the agenda item is discussed. Arish, what's next?
The agenda for the March 7, 2022 special meeting of the CDBG Advisory Committee was posted on or before March 4th, 2022 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Item 2, reports information only at A, Community Capital Improvement Project status.
Okay.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Caribbean and members of the committee. Your report packets have the status of city and community capital improvement projects that are currently in the pipeline. We will be presenting a more comprehensive PowerPoint at our future August meeting, but today we want to brief you on this report. At this time, there are 4 CDBG funded city projects, and one of them is the Pelanconi Park Playground Project, which plans are currently being reviewed by the City of Glendale's Building and Safety. The permit should be issued later in this month, and anticipated bidding will be conducted in April or May of this month of this year. The project is expected to be completed by this fall. Next is our Pacific Park Artificial Turf Multi-Purpose Field Project. This is a $1.8 million project with $1 million dedicated in CDBG funding to convert the existing baseball field to an artificial turf multi-purpose field. Staff is awaiting results of a life cycle assessment of the environmental impacts of using artificial turf versus natural. Permits are ready. The project completion is dependent on the council's determination on artificial turf usage. Although funding for the Pacific Park Playground and Pool Shade Structure Improvement Project and the Pacific Park Splash Pad projects are broken down into 2 separate projects when we're talking CDBG, but the city looks at this as one larger project. And this includes the installation of permanent shade structures at our 2 playground areas at Pacific Park and the shade structures next to the Pacific Community Pool, the deck area. This is also a project that will be replacing the current splash pad water feature with a new splash pad, and includes additional amenities and then the expansion and improvement of the restrooms. At this time, the project drawings are 100% complete, and they've been resubmitted to Los Angeles County for approval. Project specifications are completed and are actually being reviewed by our city's legal department. And the project is expected to start this fall and completed by winter of 2023. Next, we have our community CIP projects, starting with Armenian Cultural Foundation. They've already completed their solar panel projects. They're just waiting on Glendale Water and Power to energize the system. They've also been awarded $116,000 for their Glendale Youth Center CIP project that was awarded just last year. This includes HVAC upgrades, security cameras, installation of door key cards, and the remodel of their library and cafeteria and their second floor space. They're currently working with an architectural firm to finalize their drawings and submit that to our planning department for environmental review. We're looking at an anticipated completion of winter of 2022. Next, we have the Campbell Center. The Campbell Center was awarded a little under $200,000 for their Alma House CIP project. This includes replacing and upgrading their kitchen, laundry room, bathrooms, roof, and earthquake retrofitting. This project is currently awaiting state of California's SHPA review. The SHPA review is important because this is a very old building. I think this house was built in 1920s. So we need to get the approval first from the state to start. Contract agreements with the city are forthcoming. They're just waiting for the approval. And then the project is expected to be completed by this winter. The Campbell Center is actually scheduled today to present their proposal on Hamilton House as well. Next, we have our Homenetman Glendale Untitled Chapter. They have 4 projects in the works at this time, and they reached out to inform us they're going to be focusing and prioritizing 3 of those projects for this winter, and that is the roofing project and HVAC project, which are in conjunction with each other at the main campus. They're going to finalize their project specifications, and their architect is submitting their drawings to our city's planning department for environmental review. Homenetman is also awarded about $206,000 for the restroom renovation. That'll be their next project that they're going to be working on. And this is to make improvements to the current on their first floor bathrooms and the upgrade of ADA compliance. Their agency's architect is actually going to be working on this next for the specifications and on to our planning department for environmental review. And then lastly, Homenetman Bleacher Project is going to be the last one that they're going to work on. It's a $60,000 project that's to replace and install new bleachers at the main campus. They've actually completed their environmental review. They're just putting this project on hold to prioritize the 3 other projects which require immediate attention and improvement. Next, we have Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities has 2 projects. It's a phase 1 and phase 2 of the Glendale Community Center and their roof project. It totals about $450,000. They've completed their environmental review. We are actually finishing up and executing their contracts to begin bidding. And then the project is expected to be completed by winter of 2022. And then lastly, we have the YMCA of Glendale. They were just recently awarded $399,000 for their first floor all-inclusive locker room project to convert the girls and boys locker rooms into a larger room for accessibility and inclusivity. The agency also submitted a proposal requesting additional funding this year. They will be interviewed today, and this project will most likely start once we get confirmation on additional funding today. And this concludes kind of a brief report on our CIP projects. If you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Any questions? Anyone? I guess no questions. Thank you so much. So as far as just quickly, so for now, as far as timing of any of the agencies, they're still under extensions. They're within their time frames. Am I correct?
That is correct, Chair Garibian. They're all working to get their environmentals done and contracts executed to get to the next level.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. What's next, Iris?
Next is item 2B, review of financial ratios for community agencies applying for fiscal year 2022-2023 capital improvement project funding.
Chair Garibian, members of the advisory committee, staff had already presented a PowerPoint on Friday's meeting regarding the CDBG applicant ratios. They were used as an additional evaluating tool for your interviews for Friday and for today as well. Today there are 4 agencies which are being interviewed, and then 2 of them also had public social services interviews last Friday and had opportunity to discuss their ratios with the committee. The 2 other agencies that are up today will be the Campbell Center, which didn't have any out of range ratios, but we did have the YMCA, and today might be a good day to ask them if why their ratios are out of range, and this is for debt ratio. As for this report, this is just quickly a briefing. I know we went over it on Friday. We could go over it again if the committee wishes, but this concludes the report briefing.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Mr. Armin.
I don't know if you mentioned this, so sorry if I missed it, Maggie, but the amounts that we're talking about, do we need to keep anything in mind in terms of, like we did on Friday, in terms of amounts that could come in less versus more, any of that kind of situation? Same situation?
Committee Armenian, by amounts, I'm sorry, if you can clarify what you.
Amount available for allocation.
I will.
We have to do this, kind of keep the same thing in mind, that the amounts could come in less or more.
Exactly, and we will have a report and a PowerPoint for you in the next few minutes, I'm sure. So for the committee to see what the total breakdown is, what we anticipate is estimated, and what the difference will be from what the agencies have requested this year for funding.
Okay, and I don't see in any of these proposals anything like the social service programs where agencies have mentioned a minimum. In fact, most of them are asking 100%, which obviously is not possible given the anticipated amounts. Correct. So there's no one that said I could work with 50% or what have you.
This is an excellent question to ask the agencies today, and I believe that Ms. Alexanian would agree with me. Today, what the committee can do is ask instead of asking the minimum, what can they reduce from the scope of work that would bring it down, and we could at least understand as staff what they're going to be working on. That way we can submit that to our planning department for approval. It makes the staff time much easier once we know what they can and cannot work with. So that would be our advice to the committee. Ms. Alexanian, if you want to chime in as well. I know this has been a discussion between staff before.
No, thank you, Maggie. Good morning, everyone. I think that you pretty much covered it. I think what's important for the committee is to confirm today what the funds will pay for. So if it's not the full scope of the proposal, if we are able to give them 50%, 20%, 40%, it's important to be clear what that amount of money will be used for so that you're making a conscious decision as to whether the agency is going to be able to absorb it or modify the project to be able to complete it. Because sometimes the agencies don't have funding to be able to still do the full project. They'll have to scale it down, and it's important for you to know, whether paying for the exterior improvement is just as important as paying for an interior improvement for a different project. So those are good questions to ask today. As for CIP, we don't ask for what is the minimum that you would still take and complete the project, because oftentimes it changes the scale of the project and they might not even be able to do it. So thank you.
So then they can also, I notice at the YMCA, they've phased it over 2 cycles to try and get the full amount. Is that also an option? I'm presuming, since YMCA is doing that.
Chair Garibian, members of the advisory committee, committee member Armenian, that is an option, but they were also asked last year if they could possibly get private donations or other funding sources, and they have actually worked on that as well. So they will most likely tell you today what those funding sources are aside from the CDBG funds. They had originally asked for $566,000. The project is coming in a little higher than anticipated, but they did also do fundraising last year. So again, it would be a very good question for them to ask them.
Thank you.
Chair, even members of the committee member Armenian, I think one thing that's important is phase projects are okay. But what's important is that the project needs to keep moving. So if the agency is not going to be able to start the project until it's fully funded, then that would be a challenge for us, because we wouldn't know if the committee would be able to commit funds the following year, if that makes sense. So if the phase project is assuming commitment for a future year CDBG allocation, I don't think that that would be a safe way to go. I think in this particular case, they just happened to we could ask them, but I'm not sure if they realized they were going to expand the scope of the project, or they realized that they're not able to fully fund the project, and because a year of not much had happened, they're back asking for more money for the same project or a similar project. So we could clarify that with the why, but just in general, as a phased project, assuming CDBG allocations is not a safe way to go, because if you're not able to fund it the following year, then I'm not sure what would happen to the originally funded project. Just a side note to keep in mind.
Well, and that's what's happened, right, with YMCA, is they've come back for the balance.
My understanding, and we could ask them today when I read the proposal, it seems like it's a similar proposal with a little bit of expansion. So I'm not sure if they just changed the scope of the project based on either funding or just realizing when they started the project that there's more to be done. We could ask for clarification, but a lot of the project seemed to be similar to what was submitted last year in the proposal. So, but we could clarify with them why they chose to phase it, or if there's an expansion, that I'm not 100% sure on.
But based on staff report, and sorry, this is my last question, Chair Gergen, I'm just trying to understand the differences here. You know, with you know, the Campbell Center, they had come in with 3 proposals last year. We funded one of them. Now they're coming in with another one, right? It's kind of distinct proposals, but the kind of the same proposal as what we were not able to fund last year. With YMCA, they've come in for the exact same project, which I'm not sure based on staff report a moment ago, how much of the project they've actually gotten off the ground. It seems like they're coming in for just the balance. So they've taken the risk, to your point, Ms. Alexandrian, that, you know, we would kind of come in with the balance, because I'm not seeing much of a difference here between what they've came in with last year versus what they've come in with this year, including the amount.
Chair, members of the committee, I agree with you. It does look similar, which is why I said I don't want to speak on their behalf. It does look similar with a little bit of modifications in the project description in the proposal that was submitted. So I personally haven't talked to the agency, Maggie. I don't know if you have any more clarification, if the agency has clarified anything specifically to you, but I think this is a good question to ask them. And you're right, it is for the same facility with the YMCA versus the Campbell Center, which is different buildings. So they were able to separate it, but with the Y, it's the same building, it's the same project scope or similar project scope. So it seems like it is for the same project, just possibly phased, but we could ask them for that clarification today.
And if I may add, their architect is going to be interviewing today, so that would be a very good question for the architect to ask.
Thank you.
Okay. Iris, move on to.
I'm on mute. I'm sorry, may I ask just a follow-up question? In reading the YWCA and addressing, I think, weakness number 1 on the project description, et cetera, it does say that they've eliminated, instead of expanding, they've eliminated. It says enlargement of an existing dance studio, cycle room have been eliminated from the scope of work. So I think the revised YMCA co-ed locker room scope, anyway, it's I didn't see an expansion of it. I saw an elimination of a part of it.
Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielin, that's actually a really good question and a good catch. We had actually mentioned that to them in our weaknesses from last year. They had included that dance studio, which was not part of the first floor all-inclusive locker room, and that's what we had questioned. So they removed that from the total scope of work because that's not part of what they're asking for CDBG. So that's why they're clarifying that in the weaknesses analysis, that it's still not part of the total scope of work that CDBG would be paying for.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Just one FYI, I'm not sure if Mr. Abedisian is with us or he's disconnected from us. I don't see him. I see a warning sign on his. I think we have lost him.
Committee member Avedisian, can you hear us? We're not able to hear you. If you can hear us, please log off and log back in, please,
Yeah, I can't see him or hear him.
or call in.
Right.
Mr. Chair, while
Yes.
he does that, may I ask staff another question?
Sure.
Okay, it's to the staff instead of to the YMCA. On their budget analysis report, they show a 22% requested from CDBG. And that's not correct. Because in fact, this is part 2 of their request. They're coming, we gave them 334,495 of this same total, correct? Of the total budget.
We
of
gave
812.
them an initial allocation, then we had funds returned. We added that to the pot. That's how we ended up with 334. This is why I'm saying, because in fact, if you read the summary, it basically says we're coming in for the balance. So the question that
Okay.
we have to ask them is, what have they done with what we allocated last year, and whether or not they've made progress? Because it seems to me, this is why I was kind of drilling down on this, it seems to me that they've waited hoping that they can get the full amount before they actually go forward with the project, which has some risk associated with it, as Ms. Alexanian has said.
Yes, Mr. Armenian, I understand. I even I have a question saying here that I put down in my notes. Are there any other challenges to starting this project if we do fund the second phase of this request? But I do want to have that request, the percentage requested from CDBG correct, because they're only looking at this year's request when they say 22% instead of adding the first allocation and the second allocation request. So I question that 22%. That's what I wanted to ask staff for a clarification.
Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielian, they did resubmit their project budget form, and as part of their weaknesses analysis. And if you notice, I believe it's in red. Their requested project amount from CDBG is 70% now, and their total CDBG budget request has been cleaned up, and it is now 612,428. We actually put that in red for the committee to see.
Thank you. I see it. I see it. Thank you very much.
We too noticed it, so we wanted to make sure that they had that corrected for the committee to see and to question.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
That's YMCA.
Mr. Avedisian, you're back with us. Can you hear us?
Yes. I'm sorry, but I don't know why my internet is acting up. We had Spectrum working on the lines yesterday all day, so I don't know what they did.
All right. Okay, no more questions. We're going to move on. All right, Iris, let's move forward.
Item 3, action items at A, pre-designating funds for the Fremont Park renovation project and approving a CDBG contingency funding plan. At 1 is a motion pre-designating $800,000 in CDBG entitlement funds for the Fremont Park renovation project over a 2-year period, $400,000 in fiscal year 2022-2023, and $400,000 in fiscal year 2023-2024.
Thank you. Chair Craven, members of the committee, before you is a presentation regarding a request from staff to pre-designate funds for the Fremont Park project. If you recall, Fremont Park, there was a renovation project that we presented at the June meeting. It's our oldest neighborhood park in Glendale. It's about 7.9 acres in size. And this project scope was a full renovation of the park. We came to you back in June requesting approval to apply for a $4 million Section 108 loan to be repaid over 10 years at approximately $416,000 per year using the annual CDBG entitlement funds. That was including at the time our estimate for principal and interest. The committee approved that request and we proceeded to present the opportunity to council. We took a report in November to the City Council and Housing Authority requesting that they allow us to apply for a Section 108 loan. At that council meeting, we were directed to look for other cheaper alternative and opportunities for either a loan or a bond or some other sort of funding source so that we didn't have to dedicate CDBG funds or the interest portion mostly. So staff met with the city treasurer, the finance and the legal department, and we really couldn't come up with a cheaper alternative. When we met with HUD representatives to confirm the loan amount and the interest, because at the time we were using an estimate based on previous experience, we were actually surprised to find out that the interest rate over a 10-year period for the Section 108 loan would be higher than what we had anticipated and presented to the committee, as the interest was based on a variable rate and not a fixed rate. In the past, when we have pulled a loan from, or when we have applied for a loan from Section 108 through CDBG, it was at a fixed rate. But at this time, the interest rate is a variable rate, and they couldn't assure us when there would be a fixed rate available, as it's really based on the number of loans that HUD receives. And I guess if they're able to bulk it and have a bigger pot of money, then they're able to fix the interest rate and offer a fixed interest rate. So we were told that we wouldn't be able to apply for a fixed interest rate and it would be variable. And so the interest rate is actually going to be, the interest amount is actually going to be over $400,000 instead of the $160,000 we originally anticipated. Next slide. So at this time, and in speaking with Mr. Ulanikian and the city manager, staff is not going to pursue a Section 108 loan. Instead, we are going to request funds through Measure S. So we are going to request $3.2 million in Measure S funds, $1.5 million in development impact fee funds, and we are here today to request approval to allocate $800,000 from CDBG entitlement over the next 2 years. So we would be requesting $400,000 from this year's annual entitlement and $400,000 next year. So essentially, we're looking for at least commitment this year for the next 2 years to pre-designate the amounts for the Fremont Park renovation project. This is, at the end of the day, we would be allocating the same amount, a little bit less, because we had said that as a committee, we were okay with $413,000 to be used to pay back the loan. Of course, this would only be for a shorter period, 2 years instead of 10 years, and the amount would be $800,000. Next slide. So again, going back to a similar presentation that we did with social services, we don't know what the actual allocation entitlement funds will be for CDBG this year. So we're also seeking direction for a contingency funding plan for the capital improvement project. As Maggie mentioned at the last meeting, the federal government is currently operating on a continuing resolution. Traditionally, CDBG final funding allocations are released in mid-February, but at this time, we really don't know what those are going to be. And so it would be challenging to come back to the committee and council to change the funding allocations if we got more money or less money. So we are seeking direction on an option for allocating the increase or decrease amount should we get more money or less money from CDBG. And the options are similar to public social services, but just in case some of the agencies or the public viewing were not watching the meeting on Friday, I'll just mention that the available options are to either proportionately and equally increase or decrease the recommended funding for each program funded today, project that we should say, identify a set percentage to increase or decrease from the specific project recommended for funding, or identify a specific program project recommended for funding to increase or decrease the amount from. So these are the options available, and as we interview the agencies and the committee deliberates to determine how to fund or how much to fund each of the agencies, please keep this in mind, and we'd like some direction on what to do should we get more money or less money. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Alexandrian. Any questions? Mr. Armenia, you raise your hand first.
Just a question for clarification. So the spreadsheet that staff had provided with the 4 proposals that we have, totaling 1.398 million in requested funds, what you are suggesting in terms of the 2 years of pre-designated, basically the 400,000 and 400,000. So let's just talk about this year. The 400,000 would now add on to this 1.398 in terms of requested funds. So in other words, it would come out of this current anticipated 950,000 of available funds. Is that a correct assumption, or is that different pot of money?
So Ms. Kavarian, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is 1.3 million that's available in CIP funds available to be allocated. From that, we would reduce to 400,000. So there would be $966,670 remaining to allocate to agencies today.
And
So
if I may,
please.
16,000, we had originally requested 416,000 set aside for the capital project for city. So we're putting that 16,000 back to the community agencies. Therefore, instead of 950,000 that was originally estimated, it's now 966,000. So there's about 16,000 more to allocate to community agencies.
Okay, so the spreadsheet that was provided by staff, this 400,000 is already taken off
Correct.
of the amount. And so when it shows 950,000 approximately of available funds, that's already taken into account the 400,000 for pre-designated, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand. Thank you.
Yeah, may I?
Ms. Kavarian, I think Mr. Avedisian has his hand raised earlier.
Thank you.
Mr. Avedisian, go ahead.
Thank you. I think my question is answered. Just please give me the total again, 966.
966,607. The next presentation will also show that a slide that will show the amounts, but it's 966,607.
Okay, I just wanted, thank you. I just wanted to note that I did not receive that spreadsheet in my packages. So I'm missing that spreadsheet, but I believe that
this committee member Quinones Gabriela, this spreadsheet was not sent to the committee. So committee member Armenian is probably referring to something from, are you referring to a worksheet from this packet or the previous packet, committee member Armenian?
Well, I don't know, in the box that we were given with files.
With the, okay, he's looking at the spreadsheet.
That had both the social service and the capital projects on one spreadsheet.
Okay, so committee member Armenian's looking at the spreadsheet that was provided with all the proposals in the box that you received with all the different proposals.
I only received the social services proposal.
It's,
I believe,
in the bottom. It's in the bottom of the same sheet.
Oh, I do. Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. Thank you so much for noting that. I had not noticed that it was at the bottom. I had already filed it away from Friday's meeting. Thank you. Okay, I'm glad I asked.
Any other questions? So just to piggyback on Mr. Armenia's comment, so the 447,000 or 448,000 shortage we have, or 446,000, if we wouldn't take out the 400,000, all the agencies that applied today, they will all get almost 100% funded. Is that correct?
We, Chair Garibian, There is $1.33 million in available funds for both capital for city and community, but there's only 966,607 for community projects. So we're still about 400 and some change short. So we'll show that in the next slide. We'll present that to you in the next slide, so you may see that.
Maggie, if I may, Chair Haribian, your question, the answer would be no, because unless you decide not to fund the Fremont Park project, but
That's what I mean.
right. So if you decide not to fund the Fremont Park project, yes. But previously you had also approved for the Section 108 loan. So we're not asking for additional money.
Right.
We're just swapping out the money. So instead of paying back a Section 108 loan, we're requesting that the money be allocated directly to the project. So this isn't in addition. The agencies would have had the 966,000 approximately available for funding, which is what was presented in the RFP that went out to the agencies. So this isn't reducing the amount of funding that would have been available to the agencies to begin with at the beginning of the request for proposal process.
Right. Sounds good. Okay, let's move next, Iris.
We would like direction, sorry, Iris, we would like direction, Chair Haribian, about the pre-designating of the funds so that we know how to proceed for the next presentation.
All open to everyone, but I guess we discussed Friday many times, same issue. But if anyone has any update or anything they thought of over the weekend, how else we can talk about this shortage changes, go ahead. Anyone wants to start? Fiscal, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, not about this, but I call, do we not have to vote on the Fremont Park?
Yes,
We
Chair
do.
Haribian, Committee Member Quinones Gabrielian, that's what I was asking for direction on. We would like direction on at least the Fremont Park project now. We could wait for the contingency plan after the interviews. That portion could wait, but for the Fremont Park project, we do need a motion now if you, as a committee, would like to.
I would like to move that we approve the $400,000 for the Fremont Park and another additional $400,000 next year. I think the motion has to be, can it be both for this year and next year, because that's the direction we're taking. So I move that we allocate $400,000 this year and $400,000 next year for the Fremont Park renovation.
I'll second it.
Okay, and I'll take roll call. Committee members: Armenian,
Yes.
Avedisian,
Yes.
Azarian is absent. Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielian,
Yes.
Chair Garibian.
Yes.
Thank you.
And will you be taking an action on item 3A2 at this time?
Iris, we could wait for that until after the interviews so that we can maybe hold off on that one and come back to it and at the end.
Thank you. Item 3B, funding recommendations for fiscal year 2022-2023 capital improvement projects. At 1, conduct interviews with capital improvement applicants, deliberate and make funding recommendations.
Chair Garibian, members of the advisory committee, the capital improvement project interview schedule and evaluation process is being presented to you. Just as a quick reminder, we have 4 interviews scheduled for today. All our agencies are logged on. Please use your proposal evaluation forms that were provided to you. Please sign off on them when you are done with your interviews and submit them back to staff by the end of this week. Agency presentation time is 5 minutes. There will be a Q&A period of 10 minutes. We'll have a short break at about 10:15 a.m. and then we'll come back and deliberate and make recommendations at 10:30 this morning. We hope to adjourn at 12 noon. Iris, correct me if I'm wrong, we do have to log off by 12.
I can double check with GTV about that if it's a hard deadline, 12 p.m.
Thank you. And then, and this is something that I think the committee wanted to take a look at. So for deliberation and funding recommendation purposes, again, we have an estimated amount of 1.366 million for allocation for capital improvements. That includes city and community agencies. But what we have estimated available for community agencies is $966,607, which leaves the committee with a difference of $431,579 to consider. This concludes the presentation, and you may begin interviews if you don't have any other questions from staff.
Do you want any questions? No questions? Okay, let's move to the interviews. Iris?
Sorry, it would help if I turn on my mic. The first interview is the agency number 1 on your list, Essentia, and Meredith is joining us. Meredith, if you could please introduce yourself to the committee.
Hi, I'm Meredith Fleischer, and I am the Director of Grants and Contracts for Essentia. So I'm going to be presenting our repiping project that we're proposing to you today. We are seeking funding to repipe our 11,500 square foot access center and shelter at 1851 Tyburn. The current piping in the walls is aging and rusting. The major issue is that the piping in the walls is made of galvanized steel, and there are copper pipes on the tankless water heaters. When the galvanized steel is connected to the copper pipes, it creates a chemical reaction that makes the water acidic, which further corrodes the galvanized pipes. Instead of replacing leaks as they happen, we are proposing a complete changeover to the new pipes. It will save money over fixing leaks as they happen. This work will require removing all existing piping, rerouting condensation lines, and installing all new pipes to prevent this rusting and aging. After the pipes have been replaced, we will need to add drywall and paint the areas of the walls that were opened. Additionally, we want to add a recycling pump to the tankless water heaters. We believe that this repiping project will provide a long-term solution to the water leak problems and aging pipes at our shelter. This project benefits the community by helping control our costs and thereby freeing resources to be devoted to other services. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions? Start with this here.
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for applying. Never give up. Couple of questions and a suggestion.
Okay.
On your budget form, you present 2 different numbers, and
Yes.
then on the application and the paperwork and the explanation, you show also a different number. That is actually what is being requested, which is the $40,840. But the budget forms, one of them shows 31,840. The other one is 37,840. I just want to make sure that that is the accurate number. The 40,000 is the accurate number.
No, I'm sorry. We sent a revised budget when we responded to that issue in the weaknesses response. It's so the revised number is 31,840.
Okay. So 31,840 is the correct number. Okay, because there's too many numbers and they're all similar and doesn't reflect the actual. Question. I was looking at the contract or estimate that you have from your plumbing company, and in the estimate, in the proposal, they identify an item that says we will determine if the vertical pipes need to be changed during the conducting the work, during the construction, which I understand that's normally how it works. However, have you put any contingencies, any money aside if that case happens and you need to remove or replace some of those pipes? I don't see it on anywhere that I
No, no, it was not included in the original quote. So no, that is not included in this proposal.
So what happens if you do have some pipes that needs to be replaced at that point?
We'll have to raise additional funding to support that.
Okay. Okay. Something to think about before going in the job, starting the job. If you don't have the exact funds available, and last minute, I'm sure it's going to be much harder to run around and look for funding, manage it that way. The one other thing I would suggest, although I know the building is not, it's built in 1983. It's not built before 1978. However, those eras, those years, the asbestos material were still used in some parts of the buildings, and you don't have any estimate or any kind of a consideration for checking for asbestos. And that is a big issue, especially in the units that you're breaking up walls. I'm not sure if they are dry walls or they're plaster walls. So I would suggest that to consider that regardless the year of the building, because there are still materials that they were used during those years in the 80s also. That would be my suggestion, and that could be a very costly if you have asbestos, and when they're removing it, it has to be a completely different process while doing that. So that cost of your project is going to go much higher, easily 10, 15,000, maybe even more than that. So I highly suggest that you guys look into it and from beginning. Uh, I don't want you guys to start and then find out about it, and there's a big issue, especially you have tenants in the building. They're not a vacant units. With that, that should be it. I wish you guys well. Good luck
Thank you.
on the project, and thank
Thank
you
you.
for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Avedisian. Yes, Ms. Capital.
Thank you. Thank you for your brief but very, very good presentation, Ms. Fleischer. I agree. This is an important need and an important upgrade for Ascensia. I have a very quick question. One of the weaknesses that was identified was the missing proof of payment for the submitted quarterly state and federal tax statements. And it says, please see attachment. And I do see the actual form. I just wanted to make sure that the staff has received proof of the actual payment of the 118,000.
We did. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Chair Garibian, members of the advisory committee, Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielian, we did receive all the paperwork requested from Ascensia, and we have it in our files.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was all. Thanks, Ms. Fleischer.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Armenia.
Not a question, but just a reaffirmation. I wanted to kind of throw in a few words based on what Mr. Avedisian also said. I've done several repiping projects myself personally, and I will tell you that you can almost guarantee that it'll lead to other things once the walls are opened up and other pipes. So I would really highly recommend that you figure out the solution to the issue that Mr. Avedisian raised, because you're almost guaranteed it's going to lead to other pipes that need to be replaced beyond what you're anticipating. And once the walls are open, you're kind of at the mercy of the situation and the plumber, because you can't close the walls up because you'll want to get the job done while the walls are open. So I would highly recommend you figure out the funding, that part of the funding aspect, since that's not part of what you're requesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Fraser, thank you so much for your presentation. I must have missed it, but I've gone through this packet many times. I couldn't find the contractor's estimate. I don't know where it is. I went over it multiple times. But just a question: is it $10,000 supervision and management for a $16,000 job? Do I read that correctly? But 60% of the actual job goes to management and supervision.
I believe I added in funding for our director of operations to oversee the project. I think once it happens, once the walls are open, it will require a lot of oversight and management.
Okay, thank you so much. And no other questions? We're good to go. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Iris.
Next, we have agency number 2 on your list, the Campbell Center. With us is Nancy. Nancy, if you could please introduce yourself to the committee. Nancy, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Good morning, committee members. Thank you so much for allowing me and the Campbell Center to make a presentation to you this morning. This is, as noted, the second time we've requested funding for the Hamilton House repairs. And this is essentially a similar bid. What's different is we did add updated prevailing wages, as we are now a year later, and also contingencies for termite and lead and asbestos. We had a different contractor essentially update the original inspection, and these were recommendations he made, and based on comments just referred to with Essentia, I think it was a very, very good idea, because these older buildings, the Hamilton House was built in 1980, or we purchased it in 1985, and it was built several decades previous. So we're likely to fall into those kinds of same situations with the renovations that we're proposing. They pretty much reflect infrastructure improvements, painting, remodeling. Most of these bathrooms the bathrooms and kitchen have not been replaced since we did the renovation in 1985, when we turned it into a group home for 10 residents. So this represents a quality of life improvement for the residents. It's a high use kind of environment with that many folks in that home. So those bathrooms, kitchen, floor, everything gets very high use. So we appreciate consideration to allow us to do these renovations. And I'm open to questions.
Thank you so much. Questions? Mr. Avedisian.
Good morning and welcome again. Nice to see you. Thank you for coming back and trying one more time.
Thank you.
I know the project. I can see from the all the pictures that provided that the project really needs a lot of work and a lot of love and care to this. Thank you for, first of all, looking into the lead and asbestos, because that's pretty important. And I know it's a pretty highly cost project on that. What I'm concerned on your explanations in the application, you do identify that you're going to do the construction with some phases while the tenants are in the building and doing that. I highly don't see that happening. If you move in and start removing restrooms, and especially if there's asbestos or anything in that sense, or issues like that, the tenants being in the units, in the bedrooms basically, or the rooms, I don't see that project happening, and especially on time. That will drive your cost quite high, because no matter what, there will be a lot of surprises once you open up the walls, and there will be a lot of things that you need to do. And I would highly suggest that you guys look into a different avenue or direction or some sort to be able to move the tenants out and get the project in and out right away, and pretty timely. That way your contract actually cost might go down, because they're all doing the same project at once instead of doing it in phases. So I would highly suggest that look into that process. And that's all are my questions or suggestions.
Well, thank you. Shall I respond or should I wait for additional questions?
Go ahead, respond. That'll be great.
Yeah, it is a difficult choice. As a licensed home, there are a lot of parameters that kind of require that we maintain our residents in their home. However, we do have the other two group homes. So I suppose if push really came to shove, we could really relocate those residents in their bedrooms. We have staff bedrooms, essentially empty bedrooms that staff use, that they sleep over in each home. So we have an empty bedroom in each home, and perhaps accommodations could be made in splitting up we currently have 8 folks in Hamilton House right now. We could do 4 and 4 in the other homes if we really had to on a very temporary basis. And that would be fairly cost effective in that that would not require actual renting some other kind of facility for them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gabriel, yeah.
Thank you so much. Is it Miss Stone? I can't remember your last name, Nancy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Niebrugge. Nancy Niebrugge. I'm not sure I fully introduced myself. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. Miss Niebrugge. Hi. Thank
Hi.
you for the presentation and for what you do. It's amazing
Thank you.
work and very needed in the community. And I know that that these homes need updating. I was trying to get a handle on the funding. As you heard maybe in the introduction, we are short by over $400,000 worth of funding. And if we were to look at the phases and perhaps break down the funding respective to each of those phases, do you have a handle on what is the most important phase and what you could complete in one of those phases and how much funding that would be, just to help us out instead of saying all or nothing?
Right.
What can we, is there an approach that you can help us with?
Yeah, absolutely, because that was certainly a consideration last year, and you never know how many agencies are in need each year, and so you do sort of start from one point. But in breaking it down, I kind of divided it into 3 tiers. Tier 1 being kind of an infrastructure tier, so really looking more at the roof, the HVA system, the water heater, the real infrastructure kinds of exterior considerations. The second tier, I did include the bathrooms in that first tier because they are the worst. They really need renovation. Second tier, kitchen, laundry, more of the painting and electrical. And then the third tier, some of the more exterior work like concrete repair and such. The first tier repair, not including other expenses, but just straight construction costs. Adding up the items that I've identified, it would be $199,120. So $199,120. And that represents the roof. So items number 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 10, and 18 of my proposal.
Could you repeat that?
Actually, I'm going to take that back because actually I'm looking at an older one that has a, let me, if I may, define it by its definition rather than number. New roofing, replace windows and patio, bathroom remodel 1 and 3, bathroom remodel 2, water heater, anchor bolting for earthquake, AC unit, and the gutters and downspouts would be part of that roofing project. Those are the items in the first tier.
What was the total amount, the dollar amount?
$199,120. The total on the second tier, if you were able to consider further, is $188,770. The second tier, as I defined it, would include the laundry remodel, the kitchen remodel, the rewiring, exterior doors, repaint of interior, repaint of exterior and garage. And the water retention pit in the rear of the garage. We have a bit of a standing water issue that needs attention. It collects algae and insects. It's hard to ferret out exactly which is the most critical, but I did my best in that regard.
Okay. And then the balance is the rest.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, you did you were very thoughtful and prepared, and I thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
For answering
Thank you.
the
It helps to have gone
questions.
through it
Thank you.
once, doesn't it?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Mr. Armenia, do you have any questions?
Yes, just one additional question. And thank you, Ms. Quinones Gabriela. And that was a really good question and answered my first one. I know you're still in the beginning phases of your previous project that we funded.
Mm-hmm.
Management perspective, staff time, et cetera. Would you be able to do these things in parallel and getting a second project off the ground as well? From a time
I think so. Thank you. Yeah. We have two residential administrators, and these two houses both fall under different administrators. So in addition to my support and our general sort of headquarters support, I have two individuals who can co-lead each of these projects with me so that they would be separated.
And what about the other issue that was brought up at the initial part of the discussion, which is you may have to move residents from one to another while one's being renovated? How are you going to do that if two are kind of moving at the same time, even though they're slightly different?
Well, the first house, Alma House, is smaller, and so I'm not sure we're going to need, well, it's going to have, if we had to move both houses, there would be a natural phasing because of the year between these projects. So by the time, because we're very close, as I understand it, to the contract and selecting the contractor, the blind bid process for the contractor. I understand we're very close to having the review of the Alma House drawings approved. So if we had to move people out from that house, it would be a year before we'd be in that position with Hamilton House, given the time it takes to create drawings, submit drawings, have them approved. So if we were in a position of having to swap folks, it would be a year apart, as it appears.
Okay, thank you very much, and appreciate everything you do in the community. It's really important.
Thank you, and we very much appreciate the city's support. Really do.
May I ask one question? Unless others.
Sure. Go, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, Chair Haribin. Just to clarify, thank you for the presentation. For the phases that you identified, would these be for, are you suggesting that you would do phase one and then come back next year to do phase two, or would the agency be able to fund one of the phases down the road? Just to clarify.
Oh, that's a good question. I guess I was assuming that at some future point, a year or 2 years after, I would seek funding for the second phase because it's a significant sum. I do feel like perhaps that last phase, which represents 61,000, perhaps by that point in time, I might be able to fund that through other grant funding. We do get some private support, and there are some foundations who will fund some capital. But I had intended that if possible, that we would simply be able to, as we did this year, come back. I recognize that you have a lot of agencies to support, so it may be that we'd have to wait more than a year to be able to come back.
And as a follow-up question to that, should the agency not be able to fund it in future years, would you be submitting your plans as one project? So would you still proceed with the first phase and complete it even if you didn't have funding for the second phase? Or would you be
Yes.
breaking out the plans and submitting them in phase 1 and phase 2?
Even if we weren't going to reapply for the remainder, the things that are identified, the infrastructure needs in phase 1 really do need to be done. So we would simply get done what we can and continue to make plans and attempt to figure out ways, even if it's in maybe smaller increments, to get the second phase done.
Okay, thank you for that.
So thank you for your presentation. Obviously, looking at the financial ratios that we have from you guys, I see that your average reliance on source of income as grants, it's pretty low. Low relatively. It's still high, but 62% versus some agencies we're at 90 or so. So that's a good thing. So you have other sources of income, so that helps us to make that decision that you can get extra fundings if necessary. And also, I see your debt ratio is pretty low, so that also helps knowing that financially you are able to budget your entire finances accordingly, so you won't be too much of a risky agency. As far as the details that you went over, I had it previously. I went over it myself and some of the numbers, some of the items, as you said, could be in a different phase because I don't see them related to one, meaning just hypothetically speaking, if you're doing a paint interior, it doesn't have to be painted exterior. That could be done 2 years later, so on and so forth.
Correct.
So you just want to make sure some of the items you mentioned, you get it all dirty and done in one, so you don't have to redo it again. Like in the past, we had a case that we changed that people applied for, agencies applied for solar without us considering the age of the roof. So when they had to change the roof, they had to tear out the solar again. So in this case, we realized that it's not in your case. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Iris, who do we have next?
Mr. Chair, I have a staff question before we move on, if possible.
Sure, absolutely.
Any one of the staff, I guess. I was wondering, I think I've asked this question in the past also. I don't remember the exact answer. Is there a possibility, is there a way that the projects that we fund, we can basically have the city, the planning department, all that, get this process, their process much faster, and maybe one-man show driving it forward or type of thing. So these organizations don't wait for so long. And of course, with that, everything else changes with that. The cost of construction, cost of material, and all that goes up. I was wondering if there is a way that we can work out with the planning department and basically handheld these organizations and move them forward on a faster base. Thank you.
Chair, Caribbean members of the advisory committee member Amadisian, you make a very good point. We do work with 2 members of the planning department who are actually trained on a CDBG software called Hero system to do the environmental reviews, which do take quite some time to do. That being said, we have been working with them. They have been short-staffed from what we understand from community development. They're spread thin at this time, and we do try to prioritize our projects, especially at certain times of the year. So, for instance, a good example would be for the Campbell Center. They're waiting for a SHPO letter from the state. So the planning department did submit that letter, but unfortunately, you still have to wait for the state to respond back. So that's an example of having to wait a little longer. Other projects that the planning department can push through and are quicker, honestly is dependent on the agency providing the drawings and the right submissions and the planning department requests to expedite that. So a few factors are in play, the short staffing, the fact that only a couple of the planners know that HERO system, the CDBG HERO system, and just being spread thin at this time. But we will talk to them. We have in the past, and I know Ms. Alexanian is quite aware, we've actually had numerous meetings with them to figure out ways to expedite the process. And we're still getting there. We will get there eventually.
Thank you.
They're talking, but we can all hear it.
Yeah. Okay, Iris, who's next?
Yes, next is agency number 3 on your list, YMCA of Glendale. And if you could please introduce yourselves.
YMCA, you guys are live.
George, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, please begin your presentation by introducing yourself and anybody else that's joining you.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate allowing us coming in earlier than scheduled. Good morning, everybody. George Cycli, I'm the CEO at the Glendale YMCA. And today I'm bringing before you the same case statement we had last year. It is addressing the special need population in Glendale. That was basically, there were a couple of things that came to my attention recently. Well, first of all, I'm a parent of a son who is disabled. And that opened my eyes to a whole different world that basically people like me and people with disability do not need pity. They need recognition and working environment that assure them and assure us that we have a dignified experience wherever we go. So based on that, I went in ahead and I got a grant from a private foundation. We went in and did a whole floor at the YMCA. If you come to the Y.
No, it's connected.
Hold on 1 second, George. Hold on 1 second. Can we have Mr. Richard mute his microphone, please?
Thank you.
Chair Harabian, I'm sorry, Mr. Sakai, but I have a feeling they're unable to hear us because we keep muting them and they keep unmuting themselves. So
correct.
I'm not sure if they could hear us. Mr. Dell, are you able to hear us?
I'll give him a call. I'll give him a call.
Okay.
Okay. So about 5 years ago, before COVID, we went ahead and built a floor down in the first floor at the YMCA that is basically custom made for people with physical disability. So you come in on a wheelchair, we move the seat and you could move in your chair and do the exercise as well as...
Is George involved in the one previous to us?
No.
Could you call Richard, please? He can't hear us. So, anyway,
why don't you take him off the meeting, maybe? Can you do that?
That doesn't make any sense.
I'm going to need him for technical stuff later, but I don't know why he can't hear us.
Good grief.
So it's picking up.
I'm texting him as we speak, unless you want to do it, Iris.
I sent it in. If he reads his email, he'll say something. Speak.
I apologize, Sakai. I guess let's just wait because we don't want to get interrupted again.
I just texted them to please mute yourself.
Pick up, that's Iris.
I hopefully about this, but I took it to my board and raised the case that 18% of the folks in Glendale have some type of disability, which is really higher than LA County, 10%. We're 18% in Glendale. So we went in and we custom made a floor. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself a little bit. For people, based on the message that we want to work as much as we can at the Y and in the community to recognize special needs and to make sure that the environment lead to a dignified experience for all, whether they are physically disabled. By the way, we have, before COVID, we had 4 homes that were coming in with mental and physical disabilities to the Y at no cost, just because I know how much it means to them based on my own experience with my son. Having a dignified experience is really what matters to us when it comes to mission. So as I opened the floor, I had a couple of people coming in saying, this is the greatest, we enjoy it, but where do we shower? I need assistant. There was one lady and one gentleman, they said, I need someone to come into the shower facility with me for me to shower. And we had no answer. This is the reason, the primary reason for this, in addition to people who have auditory problems and can't shower themselves. They can't go into an open shower area because of the sounds. So that's why we decided to do this universal locker room, because it's going to have 12 private booths and with a nice sound. So there would be a dignified, assuring a dignified experience, and that we are doing something for this special population that lives with us. I really think that, that we may be also faced with more special needs down the road. The privacy is taking care of that, whether it's gender neutral or mother with a younger son, boy, or vice versa. It will be able to address all those special needs of today and the future. That's my presentation.
Thank you so much. I know for Mr. Bill, it's out right now temporarily. Probably they'll log in later, but that would be for our staff if they have any direct questions to the architecturals and construction. But for now, any questions for Mr. Sagali, anyone? Mr. Armenia, do you have any questions for him?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And of course, as always, thank you for everything that the YMCA does for our community. Very special organization, just like all our organizations, and you provide a very essential service.
Thank you.
But we had a little bit of discussion prior to you coming on earlier when we were getting a report from staff in terms of what had been done with regard to the work that we had funded last year. So if you remember, YMCA had come before us last year. Initially, we weren't able to fund the entire amount, and we're under similar funding pressures this year because of the number of proposals and the lack of available funds. But we were able to also reprogram some additional funds a little bit later in the cycle when certain funds were returned. So we funded a total of approximately $334,000 for this project. And I see that you're coming back essentially for what seems like the balance of it. Can you describe or clarify what has been done to date from your perspective on the project? And kind of will this additional funding that you're requesting basically complete it? What we had also seen last year, because the proposal is pretty much identical.
Yeah, thank you. We actually went ahead and, we got 348,000. We raised another 225 to 250. Keep in mind that, as Maggie was mentioning, the challenge with the staff with COVID, from 120 staff, we ended up with a 2.5 equivalent, full-time equivalent, trying to survive and doing all this. And that's one of the reasons why, so I was raising money and trying to balance do recovery at the Y. But we did raise 225 to 250,000. when Richard and we got the architects and the developers and they start coming in, we realized that 3 years ago, that was the budget and we hit the goal. Once we started to go into the nitty-gritty stuff, I hope Richard can hear us, but with the cost increase in material and labor, it cost us more. And that's why we came back to you. We did hit the 625,000 goal. The problem now, it's 800, whatever is the amount, due to the cost in material and labor. And I wish Richard will come back now. He could articulate it better than me. But
No, I'm keenly aware of the inflation and escalation as demand and supply chain problems and all those things. So I appreciate that clarification from me, because that's very helpful to understand the total cost of the scope of the project. So the scope hasn't changed. It's just that the costs have increased over time because our process is inherently slower when it comes to funds. So I don't know. I'm hearing Richard on the other end, Richard Dell. So I don't know if you want.
You can't hear them.
Yeah.
They still can't hear us.
That's part of the problem.
Okay.
We can hear you.
It's not a matter of volume.
Richard, can you hear us?
We just can't.
No, I'll do the best I can. So the whole thing is basically, you ask about where we are. We are now, and I hope Richard will hear us soon. We are before plan check. We're before plan check, and the plan is once we get the plan check, pulling permits and going immediately to interviewing for contractors will be parallel approach. We're not going to wait until that. I'm hoping, and I made this promise to my board and to you and everybody else, that we're hoping by end of June we'll break ground.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Saikali.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else with questions? No questions? Thank you so much, Mr. Saikali. We appreciate your presentation.
Thank you all. And I want to thank you for your prior support as well. Last year, you guys were like, what an inspiration that you recognize that special populations. And I once again want to thank you.
George, before you go, I had one question. I forgot I was going, but I got sidetracked with George's. Your ratio on the financial summary that we have. Obviously, this is 2019-20, but the ratio it's pretty high. So, can you explain to us your financial stabilities and what happened there?
What happened is we due to COVID, we were fully shut down other than the low-income housing. And that was 2/3 of our revenue. So we got a PPP loan that we paid due to the condition non-cash, but it's the support, the staffing, etc., and the cost of the Y. We paid it. We were fully forgiven in 2021. That plus we also took advantage of a loan, ADA loan, that was 150,000 at a very like 1 or 2%, to make sure that our cash positioning is strong enough to survive through the COVID. But that really has changed the ratio. I think once we get the audit, and I'll be more than happy to send you the, once we get the audited statement for 2020, which should be around June, July, you will see that our ratio is much lower because we've made a lot of payments in through the, we met the conditions and it was total forgiveness. Dropping the revenue, increasing that in the book as liability. And I keep reminding everybody, and this is like, even my board, you know, it's hard to remember. When we did the 121 ACE building, we received $3.5 million from Meta Development. Our CPA auditor is recognizing that money on an annual basis, like a $60,000 a year throughout the term of the 55-year lease. That has, which means on the book under liability, we have a 3.1 million still left.
There we go.
Right, the bookkeeping, it's always tricky, but also one of the reliance on source of income That's great. It's 34%, so you get a majority from either members or fundraisings or memberships and all that stuff, which is a great number being that low. And number of months with this bookkeeping, not through 1521, still shows 10 months of reserves, which is not bad. With this bookkeeping, so I assume 21, your number of months will be extremely high. Thank you so much. I don't know if we have George on the line because we still can't hear him. Can you hear us, Mr. Bell?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so he's online. If any of the
I do have a question.
Mr. Chair.
Good morning, George. Good morning, Mr. Dell.
Good morning.
Thank you again for applying. And we know what YMCA does and how it works in our community and how it helps. But looking at the project, I've asked the same question with other applicants also. Looking at your building and the age of the building, and I did not notice or see anything on the estimates in regards to the asbestos testing or asbestos removal consideration of the cost. Have you thought about that? Have you looked into it? Or because the building is 1977, and I'm almost 100% that there are some asbestos somewhere in the project.
Yes, thank you. If you recall, we had a capital project about 3 years ago, and we checked, and we've done asbestos removal in the 70s, like 1980, when they went in and did all the removal at a lower cost. So we have no asbestos in our building. They did the asbestos removal already done 15, 20 years ago.
Oh, all right. Great. Thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Garibian mentioned that our board chair, Dr. David Vayar, is on the phone as an indication that the whole board is supporting this cause. I just want to recognize him.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other questions? I guess not. Thank you so much. And I appreciate all the time and efforts. Thank you for Mr. Bell and Mr. VR being online, but we're good with questions. Let's move on, Iris. Who's the next agency?
Thank you all for all your support. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes, the last agency is agency number 4 on your list, YWCA of Glendale and Pasadena. With us is Tara Peterson, and also Mr. Dell will continue to be part of her presentation as well.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Peterson. Ms. Peterson, you're on.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. And I'm so glad that Richard Dell is able to join us for my presentation. Sorry, George. So as you all know, we are, there's some feedback. I hope it's not me, but.
Oh, it's Mr. Bell.
Okay, cool.
Or maybe not.
Okay, so we're back. We're really excited to be back before you all again, requesting funds for our amazing and beautiful Lexington building, which you all know is a historical building here in the city of Glendale and has been just an amazing place to work over the last 6 years, and to see how much we've been able to do to really to make sure we're able to maintain that building and keep it going. As you all know, that building serves as our domestic violence service center. So that's where we provide services to all victims of domestic violence and their children. We also are a landlord, and we have Head Start, who's been with our facility for over 20 years, who operates a preschool. And we also are available to the entire community to access our different parts of our facility when needed at very low cost, and most of the times no cost. And so we're really excited to come before you again with a proposal that really focuses on things that need to be done, right? Things that actually need to be done in order to improve accessibility of our building, and to really make the investment that we need to make in these long-term commitments to being in our community. And so with that, I think we outlined our detailed scope of work, but I really am going to ask Richard Dell to really talk about the importance of our scope of work. I know you guys have a hard decision to make around funding and allocating of funds, but we really want to express to this committee about the importance of the scope of work and the importance of us being able to to receive funding the amount that is requested. So, Richard?
Well, great. Thank you, Tara, so much. I'll try and keep it very short and sweet. As Tara said earlier, these are necessary improvements. Accessibility, Title 24 accessibility easement, are actually accessibility to be compliant with Title 24. If you've been in the building before, you'll notice that there isn't a handicap and or accessible toilet on the ground floor within all three structures. The work here is limited to the original building, the 1926 building. It will allow us to provide ADA toilets in the main building, men and women's. It also allows us to put a ramp that will connect the lower Regency room, which is disconnected through a set of steps, giving us full accessibility through the whole structure. As we do the work and do the remodel of the bathrooms, we'll be adding structural shear walls on the inboard face side of the exterior walls. Wherever we open up the walls, structural has designed shear connections. We'll be designing shear connections and shear panels. So in this particular condition, the work that we're doing is really a necessity. We outlined, as we know, you have tough decisions to make with regard to funding. We've outlined a priority of project components that, depending on the funding, we'll allocate those dollars accordingly. I believe that was part of your package. Starts with replacing the electrical service down in the basement, which is an existing 200 amp service. And you can imagine building that size operating on 200 amps. And then it graduates up through the accessibility, and then it goes into insulating the building, the ceiling, and the underside to try and make the building more energy efficient. You can imagine this is an old building, the windows leak, and the sustainable cost of keeping that building operational, we can mitigate that by putting in the insulation. And then there's also some improvements with regard to the Regency room, making that structurally sound with seismic connections, things that weren't done back in those days. That's really the scope of the project in an outreaching kind of proposal. The only area that would be perhaps questionable is that we have a lot of work that needs to be done on the exterior of the facade in terms of all the wood repair and the front balconies, things of that nature. That would be probably the first component that we would not do should we not receive full funding. Are there any questions? I'm happy to answer with regard to the scope of work, etc.
Can I add one thing before we ask questions? I just also want to note that we did come forward a couple years ago for a similar project, including HVAC, and we pulled that application off mainly because of the way our auditors were requiring us to record our CDBG as a liability, as a note payable, and it was really impacting our ability to get other funding from foundation grants. But we have a new auditor who we were able to get a second opinion. And so that's why we came back this time, that we no longer have to record the CDBG as a note payable for over the 30 years or however long for the rest of our life, whatever it is, based on our new auditor's findings. And so that's one of the reasons why we came back. I also want to note that we have a pending HVAC project that is going to be completely paid by the YWCA at $100,000, and we're still pending that. So we will need to figure out that, I mean, technically, even though that's not part of this package, it is part of our commitment and resources that we're already allocating to to our HVAC, which is the heating, which is really about compliance as well. So I just wanted to add that.
Mr. Regan, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you, Ms. Peterson. Any questions, anyone? Ms. Gabriel?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Peterson and Mr. Dell, and a great presentation. And I love this building, and I think many people in Glendale love it and appreciate it. My little girls took ballet there, and when you used to have a pool as well. I mean, it's a lot has changed, and I know these are very necessary improvements. I want to ask you the same thing I asked one of our other organizations requesting a very large amount of funding. As you know, we've got way over $400,000 in funding than we have available to provide. So, Mr. Dell, you did break out, I believe, the first 4 items on the scope of work as absolutely necessary, and I think, and then items starting with the first floor Regency room and Title 24 energy improvements and the exterior facade, maybe as less critical, still critical, but less critical,
So critical,
to
right.
the overall project. Could you help us in terms of breaking down the funding and maybe into phases for the most critical items, the first 4 items in the scope of work?
I can try and do that. We did not do that with the general contractor. We tried to group all of this work together to be the most expeditious and cost-effective way. If we were to phase this, obviously we all know that it would be subsequent sets of documents, subsequent permits, subsequent mobilization from the general contractor. So we did look at that component. If we had to break it out and phase it, it will just cost us more in the long run. Those last 3 items, number 5, 6, and 7, the Regency room, again, you're absolutely dead right. It's not critical, but it is still urgent that we do something like that. From a financial standpoint of view, I would be ballparking number 5, 6, and 7, the exterior facade, Title 24, and the Regency room. However, bear in mind, part of what makes the Regency room critical is that the roof diaphragm is not connected to the walls because of the age of the building. And part of that work, even though it's under Title 24 energy conservation, we will be seismically connecting the roof to the walls to better stabilize that ceiling. So is it critical with regard to HVAC or energy conservation? Yes, but more importantly, that seismic element in number 5 is just as critical. So if I were to ballpark 6 and 7, my guess for the exterior elevations, that work on the exterior facade and the Title 24 itself, just the installation, is probably, I'm going to take a wild guess here based on what I've done with the contractor, probably $120,000 to $130,000 in that range for item number 6 and 7. And that's a ballpark estimate.
Okay. Okay, and then the yeah, I can see the. I guess my other question is probably to Ms. Peterson. If you don't receive the full funding for items 1 through 4, do you have a plan? Do you have a plan to go forth and still make this, still call this a viable project that you can say, yes, this is a viable project. I still need partial funding and I'll get the rest of the funding, or is it all or nothing?
It is not an all or nothing. Thank you, first of all, for asking that question. It is not all or nothing. We have multiple capital and projects going on right now. So we have our shelter. We're also doing a parking study to look at putting our pool into a parking lot. So we're doing a parking study. We also just completed our reserves assessment, and we have a list of all of the, in addition to these repairs that have been decades and decades long not addressed, we have other usefulness of life repairs that we have planned for as well, that are just regular usefulness of life kind of stuff that we need to take care of as a steward of this amazing organization and building. And so with that being said, I think that I would be able to definitely go back to my board and ask if we were able to allocate some additional funding. We're already putting in, on top of the soft costs that CDBG doesn't carry, that would be an additional $150,000 that we would have to move from our reserves, which is something I can definitely bring back to my board, because we do really believe that when you're doing CDBG projects, it's the best to get the best bang for your buck is to have a larger project, right? And I really truly believe in that economy of scale and the cost reductions that come with that. And so not having to come back every year for new permits, additional costs for an architect, additional costs, and then also staff timing as well. It becomes a huge burden for nonprofits to do that. And so I think the number that Richard Dell gave you is a doable number for us. I know that, when you look at our financials, we look like we're in a really good financial health situation, but I really encourage you to go to our balance sheet and see how we're being a good steward of that $1 million. It is board designated right now. And so it's not something I can just say yes to, because the purpose of those funds is really to ensure the future of the YWCA and to ensure our sustainability. If anything was to happen major, if we were to lose any major funding sources from the government, that we'll be able to be adaptable and flexible and still be in the community. And so I don't want that to be a deterrent from people, or I don't want that to be part of your decision making in reducing our funding source, because we really truly believe in this project, and we believe in the building, and we believe in our community, and we want to do what's best to create a safe and accessible building for all.
That's a beautiful answer, first of all. A very, taking all of the community needs into perspective. And as a responsible landlord, I know Head Start is one of our really key early education programs that we have. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gabrielle. Mr. Avedisian, any other question? You're on mute, Mr. Avedisian.
We can hear you.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome again. Thank you for applying, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Dell. I know the facility pretty well. I've been at the facility. Actually, the hall itself, I think it was before Mr. Peterson was there. I did help painting the hall from the stage all the way to the walls and all the way to the ceiling some years ago. I know the project and I know the building well, and we did a ramp actually outside the handicap ramp some years ago, a few years back. My question is basically, I know it's a great project and what it does for the community and the needs. It's very grateful. We're very grateful for that. What I'm asking during the construction, again, Mr. Dell, I've asked everybody else also, all the applicants, have you considered the asbestos combination in the building, or being there or not, or what will you do if we need to, especially on the floors also, there's asbestos, the old floors. Have you had that consideration?
When we did if you recall, we also did the sprinkler project, and we sprinkled this building. I believe it was, Tara, it was about 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago?
It's a blur, but it was probably 2000, maybe 2017, 18, I believe.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And the CDBG funds were very, very gracious. We're able to sprinkler that building in a way that one cannot see it. During the course of that work, the asbestos program, the asbestos lead abatement study was done, and it was found to have very little asbestos whatsoever and/or lead. The ductile tile that's in the lobby and the floor areas generally don't have, not containing less asbestos. One of the first things we have to do will be doing the asbestos and lead, another examination of that space. The project has yet to go into full construction document. We're in concepts right now in pre-development, and part of that will be the asbestos and lead study. And we have adequate time to do that and mitigate it. But again, when we did the ramp out front, when we did the sprinkler system inside, they found very, very little trace elements of asbestos and some lead, and that was mitigated to no major extreme.
Great. Thank you. Again, thank you guys for applying. Thank you for everything you do, and wish you well. Good luck.
Great.
Can I also add one more thing for the committee to, if there's any other questions for the committee, just to keep in mind, but I think there might be.
There is questions, but go ahead and finish your thought. That's fine.
Well, I just wanted to just add, and it was just a closing thought, but I'll add it now, in that in our grant application, I think it's really important for the committee to be aware of that. Our capital improvement project addresses multiple program priorities, including community facilities, indoor community center, public service, mental health, youth service, homeless services, legal services, special needs, domestic violence, housing, rental security deposit assistance, public infrastructure, and ADA improvements.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. Mr. Armenia, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. And thanks for everything the YWCA does for our community. I think Ms. Peterson's quick list demonstrates how many areas they cover. I had a couple of questions that were answered already, but a couple that were not. Number one, you mentioned, Ms. Peterson, that I just want to confirm you do have a reserve fund for the facility that you regularly contribute to and save money for future improvements. Did I understand that correctly?
Absolutely. We just completed a reserve assessment that we were able to get the baseline cost of what it costs to do repairs of our building from now over the next 15 years or something like that. And so that is the reserve that our board will be allocating annually towards our building in our budget process.
So have you funded that yet, or this is a new process?
This will be our first, this will be our first time. And we were able to, this is again an example of what we were able to do with the financial support of McKinsey Scott to be able to do things that we've always wanted to do. So we started with that baseline assessment first, so we can know what it is that we need to do. And then, one of the things we're really looking at is a longer term plan for a capital campaign. But right now we needed to get that baseline number so that we can begin to put away money for that. Absolutely.
Well, first I wanted to applaud your effort. I've brought this up in the past to many organizations. I know it's very, very difficult to put money away when you're essentially, barely keeping even with your annual budget. So I do appreciate that the Y is taking that effort and encourage you to continue doing so, because that's really the best way to get into a better position. The second question I had, and this may require Mr. Dell's input, is I appreciate you outlining and trying to split up how we might phase it. I also appreciate that might add costs when you kind of stagger things. However, the difficult reality we are facing as a committee is that there's not enough money, and there's too much that's needed from multiple organizations. Even though we don't have a whole lot of organizations this year, we still have 4 solid organizations with 4 solid projects, which will well exceed the amount of available funds. So I don't know if, you threw out a number of 120 to 130. Let's just use that just hypothetically use that amount. Is the YWCA able to do the entire project by adding their own funds into it so that you are not incurring unnecessary extra costs by stretching things out, or is it that if you only got that amount that you would only literally do those few projects that Mr. Dell mentioned?
I think that my board and I'm also committed to making this project happen. And so the best we can keep it whole, the better, of course, with CDBG funding, and keeping in mind, because we don't want to have to take on those additional soft costs either, right? So if we have another project next year, there's going to be those additional soft costs that we have to take on anyways. And so I think it is definitely something that we want to keep the project whole. And so we're hoping that, that we're able to get as close as possible to that funding request, but we know that you guys have a tough decision to make. And depending on, how you prioritize your decision, I know 2 organizations are asking for more, a lot. And so if there is going to be an equitable kind of conversation, then if we had to split, that 400 between the 2 of us, we'd be willing to, that would be like 200 from us. I think that's also doable for us as an agency. I think if you get over that 200,000, it becomes more about just trying to figure out, for me, like as a CEO, just where are we going to get the funding from in our budget cycle, right? And so it doesn't mean that we can't access loans or access our reserves, take more out of our reserves than we had originally planned. So those are the conversations I would have with my board, but I think 200 it makes me feel a good place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that transparency. And appreciate your willingness, because you are correct that the Y and the Campbell Center are the two large proposals that just alone would exceed the amount available, not to mention the other two proposals. So appreciate that clarification. Thank you. That's all I had.
May I?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted a clarification on the 200,000. Where is that figure again? Is that 200 plus 130?
No, it would
or
be.
Is that 130 going up to 200? I'm just.
Well, I guess based on just my observation and how you all discuss things as a committee, and if you're looking at I think you guys are over 400 something thousand.
That is
almost 450. Yeah.
Yes. So it would be like, if you were to take an equitable approach between Campbell Center and YWCA and split that 450, it'd be like 225 each that you would reduce. If that was just the way you guys decided to make a decision, I'm comfortable with being able to move forward with this project and keeping it whole at around that level. Anything more than that, I would really have to go back to my board and discuss.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson, for coming on and for the presentation. Yeah, I remember when we did the ramp and we did the grand opening, and I was there. It was very touchy, very emotional. I visited your site many times. Of course, when I was much younger, I used to come to that facility, different reasons. But I appreciate all the work you have done. And we did the windows, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't there a window project in there?
Yeah,
also?
and you guys just completed our shelter project. Unfortunately, COVID happened, and we weren't able to bring you out for a site visit. But now that things are open back up, I would love to reach back out to and maybe work with Maggie to get a date scheduled for you all to come see that project. It is so beautiful. It touches my heart every time I go to the shelter to see what we've been able to accomplish with our backyard renovation and our garage conversion. And so that was our last project. Super proud of it, and really just excited to be able to have an opportunity to come before the committee again with another project, but something I really feel committed to doing, and being able to partner with Richard Dell, who has just so much knowledge and history about our building, has really helped us move forward and keep this organization and keep that beautiful building the way it is. And so we just want to keep making it useful for the community. So thank you guys so much for your time.
Yeah, I remember to mention the shelter. You're adding, I think, 2 extra beds. It was very important at the time. That was very touching, because those are very needed projects. So thank you so much. And I appreciate you giving us the direction of taking less funds, so at least all the agencies can help, can take advantage of the funds as available. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Mr. Bell. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Bye, everybody.
Welcome.
Thank you guys for your time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Iris, what's next?
Yes, next on the schedule is the comment period for this item, which is 3B. We don't have any callers. Just in case anyone is listening, the number to call would be 818-937-8100. And it should be appearing on the screen as well. It is. But like I said, we don't have anything at this time. So next would be a break, and then followed by discussion on development and recommendations.
Okay, I assume my committee members want to take a break, and the staff is 10:04. Is 10:15 good for everyone?
Yes.
All right, we'll come back at 10:15.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
good questions. I think cut to the
You're on.
issues.
Thank you, and we are back for our special meeting of Community Development Block Grant Advisory Committee for fiscal year 2022-23. Iris, what's next?
Next is discussion and development of recommendations for CIP projects.
Okay, committee members, anyone wants to make any comments so far on recommendations?
I wanted to disclose that I had been a long time member of the executive board of the YWCA many years ago. But, you know, I mean, it's like all of us. I think we've all been very involved in one or another organization.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Before we jump into proposals. You know, the question you asked, Chair Garibian of Essentia, the answer kind of troubled me a little bit, which was the percentage of the amount that was being allocated to project management versus the actual cost of the project. I'm saying that knowing that obviously that is the smallest of the proposals, so the least of our, I guess, issues that we have to contend with today. But the answer didn't seem to jive with. I didn't understand why about half that cost was going to just managing it. I was looking at it during the break just to make sure I wasn't missing anything. And the actual cost of $16,500 for the plumber, which that too, the missing bid was a little bit troubling too there. It just says Leon Plumbing. And then it had $2,500 for drywall, $2,500 for painting. And then it has $10,000 of that $31,000 allocated to project supervision and management. So I don't know if that's staff can give any guidance in terms of is that a normal percentage of a project that would go, especially such a small project, that would go to supervision, or is that a little bit beyond the normal? Because there's contingency still, there's overhead and profit, another almost $3,000. So anyway, what I'm getting at is only $16,500, let's say $16,500 plus the $5,000 for drywall repair and painting. That gets you to about $21,500 is the actual work. But then the balance is project supervision pretty much. So anyway, I find that it's just kind of sticking with me. I'm having a little bit of difficulty accepting that.
Committee member Armenian, Chair Garibian, members of the committee member Armenian, you would be correct because that was one of the weaknesses. Agency was requesting, and I'll just read the weakness again. Agency is requesting $10,145 under construction for a project supervisor management. What clarification we got from Essentia, it is an Essentia employee that would oversee that project. We too agree with you that it is high. It's a high cost to spend, I believe it's 3 months on the project. We could contact Essentia, ask them to come back and maybe clarify if they would want to reduce that and apply it towards construction, actual construction rather than project management, but that would be a question for them.
Well, they had the opportunity to reply to Chair Garibian's question. I didn't see anything change, and I didn't see them forthcoming with anything other than to say that's our cost. Like I said, the dilemma here for me is, while I would want to drill down on this a little bit more, it is the smallest of all the proposals. So even if we were to shave, let's say 5,000 off, it's not a huge amount compared to the larger questions. So I don't know how I feel about that, but that one particularly kind of stuck with me. And then the other general thoughts were with YMCA. I really want to see that project completed. And the more this thing gets delayed, the more costs increase. It's not going to get any better because inflation is really, really bad out there. So my general thoughts are to try and fund that completely so that we can, basically give them the resources to get the job done. The other two, I think there's more room for discussion, obviously, because they're larger proposals.
Thank you, Mr. Avedis. Any other question?
Not a question. Same concern that I had. I think you asked a question. I had it in my questions also, but I forgot to ask about the cost of the management. It's really questionable. But then again, I guess today's labor cost also is high. Whatever they're paying their salaries, I guess that's the portion of their salary that they're going to spend. How much of a time on the
63% of the cost.
Yeah, I know. It's really it did. That was one actually. It was the first item that caught my eye. And I made a note to ask the question. However, I forgot. But then again, it's a small thing, small number. I think. No, for the sake of time, I guess, if you guys want, I can
No,
start.
Mr. Avedis, if you're going to make recommendation, hold on because Ms. Gabrielian had comments too before we go to the recommendation. Ms. Gabrielian, you had questions or comments?
Yes, yes. I did want to say that, and I see it at 31.8% of the project, the supervisor, the project supervising management. I wondered if we have to bring back Ascensia to say that that is out of, it's out of the ordinary supervising management project, and we would like to bring it. We want to help them out with this project, but we want to bring the supervisory management portion within range, within normal range. Even if we give it to them at the highest normal range, it's still above, almost 1/3 of the project supervisory. Is that normal because of the nature of the plumbing issue or what they might find when they break the walls? Or if it's not, then can they still continue to fund this project if we cut it back by whatever the amount is, maybe 5,000? If we give them 5,000 less, will they still be able to complete the project? That's my question to them.
Thank you for the concerns. So yes, Mr. Avedis.
Going back to the same subject and project, I did ask them about the additional potential costs of the plumbing that may arise while they're opening up the walls for the vertical plumbing issues that may come. But I'm almost sure that will come. So that will raise the cost of the project as the construction project itself, the contractor portion of it. The staff, what I read, the staff, what they're supposed to do is one of the project manager, one of the guys is going to be moving, actually helping the tenants and moving the furniture, reorganizing stuff in their rooms and stuff wherever they need to do the work. So that's a labor intensive portion of the job. That it takes the higher amount. I think it's about $6,000 of the entire 10,000. So that's we need to consider that. And if we do cut another 5,000, it's not going to really make a big difference in our overall budget. Adding to our budget, it's not going to make a huge impact. At the same time, I'm concerned if we cut this and they have to cover that additional cost of the management. At the same time, if they're going to come back with other issues in the plumbing, then they're going to have to come up with much more amounts of dollars amounts in order to cover finish the project. So I would suggest that we should consider that also while we're thinking about the numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Yes, Mr.
Very good.
No questions. Okay, thank you so
Very
much,
thoughtful.
everyone. So just to recap and also add a little bit of to overall the conversations we had. Yes, I did bring it up. It was high, but I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt in some cases. Not necessarily this is the case, but in some cases, let's say, I don't know, you hire a DJ at a wedding. You say, I just want to play 10 minutes. But it's like, I'm going to be there all night. So that's what I need to charge for the amount of the night, whether you use with 5 or not. I'm not saying this is the case, but it could potentially be one of those. Secondly, yes, it is a small amount. Some committee members mentioned, but it's not the dollar figure to me. It's more of the principle of it, because we could have the same issue on a larger dollar amount and could be say, hey, you funded that one, you didn't question it. Why this one? So it's more of the principles also. And I think Maggie mentioned we can ask them to add it back to the construction. If the construction fee is set, I don't know how they can raise their construction cost. So I don't know if that's also possible or not. I'm not saying you shouldn't recommend the full amount they requested. I'm just wanted to go over everything that we just talked about, all of us, to see the other side of each issue at the same time. So having said that, let's move forward. I guess Mr. Abedisian had Mr. Armenia has his hands raised. Go ahead, Mr. Armenia.
Yeah, it has to do with this issue. I totally agree with you, Chair Garibian, about the principle of it, which is why I was having a difficult time just ignoring it. So again, appreciate that you raised it. I don't think it's worth bringing them back in to continue the discussion. I just think we need to make a decision. I think we could do it in one of two ways. One, you could, at a principle, reduce it by amount of percentage where it brings that percentage within a reasonable range, whatever that amount may be, $4,000 or $5,000. Or we could potentially, I don't know if this is possible, where you could say, I'm going to approve the project as proposed. However, in terms of dollar amount, however, I'm going to use some of the amount from project supervision and throw it into contingency, knowing that, you know, the other things that, such as what committee member Avedisian brought up, you know, other pipes that need to be replaced or other things they find once they open the wall, it can therefore apply to that sort of thing. That way, at least we've given them the amount that they're proposing, but we're just making a suggestion that it go to the work versus the supervision part of it. I don't know if that's something that we are empowered to do, staff, or do we have to like take it or leave it the way it is?
I think they have to enter a budget, rebudget it. I don't know if legally they have to submit a new numbers, but let's see, Mag, your staff has answered.
Chair Garibian, members of the advisory committee, the committee is allowed to make those recommendations, and we will discuss with the agency on how to rework their budget to reflect what your recommendations are, which is whether it's to reduce 5,000 from one line item and move it into another line item. We can do that and discuss it with them.
So what would be a normal, more reasonable percentage for project supervision, just so we can come up with a more defined adjustment number?
Honestly, I'd have to look that up and see, because the scope of work is very small as opposed to a larger project, which requires more supervision. And then we'd have to look at the long-term timing of overseeing a project, because this is a short turnaround. I believe it's a 3-month project versus projects that we've been on for 8 months, 9 months. So there's a lot of factors in play. So I can't really give you an exact percentage, but we can make that consideration of saving half in a different line item and possibly starting there.
Okay.
Chair Garibian, members of the committee, just as a point of clarification, I know when Maggie mentioned moving it to a different category, Chair Garibian mentioned increasing the cost. I think the point was to use the funds to pay for a different category. For example, if you look at it, they're leveraging $5,000 in construction costs for drywall and painting. So you could switch that and say the $5,000 would be paying for the construction cost, and then they could leverage the staff costs on their end. So we could make that kind of a swap. And then just speaking to the percentage, you're all right. It is a higher percentage for a smaller project. At the same time, if you look at the staff that they've identified in the clarifications for the strength and analysis, it looks like it's a 0.20 FTEs for a director of operations and 0.30 FTE for a facilities resident advisor. Those are the two positions that they are suggesting paying for. That is a higher percentage of time for both positions because it looks like that would be 3 months of, according to their description, that would be 3 months of the director of operations job to oversee this project and 3 months of the facility resident advisor's time. So I actually was hoping that they would provide a little bit more clarification to that because that is a long period for both positions to have to oversee. So the fastest way would be to, if you were willing to fund the project at that same level, would be to move it to a different category, like asking them to leverage the project management cost and then helping fund the construction costs, because I think that would be more reasonable if you were so willing to fund it at that level.
Ms. Alexandrian, I don't think I said to raise the construction cost. I did not say that.
No, she's
Ms.
suggesting.
Kavarian recommended we can do that. I didn't say to raise the construction cost. Just to be clear.
No, I think because you questioned they can't raise the construction cost. I was just clarifying what Ms. Kavarian meant. So swapping the category.
Just to say, because I did ask to, because I thought once the budget is in, I can ask them to raise the construction cost.
Correct. So I was just clarifying that that's not what she meant.
All right, thank you.
But if I could just react to that, I mean, I find $10,000 for drywall and painting to be a very high amount. So while you may be solving for one issue, it creates a different issue.
Okay. All right, so let's move forward. I think Mr. Avedisian, you are ready for the recommendation?
I am. Since I've been working on it all weekends and especially hearing today, going back and all the projects and what they had to do, where we want to be with this project. I think I would suggest to start with the YMCA project. I would suggest to fund it in a full asking, the 179. And going back to Essential, I think regardless of the issue of the labor cost, I think we still should, it's the smallest amount, we should fund it in the full. And maybe ask that they have to adjust the labor with the projects differently. Maybe put it part of the construction, if that's doable. I think you just go ahead and put it the 3180 for 840. That and the balance remaining would be, I would suggest to go since both of the other two agencies, the Campbell Center and YWCA, they both were able to adjust their scope of the work in going with their suggestion or asking for somewhere around 200,000. So with that, I am suggesting to make a balance sheet. I'm suggesting to go with the Campbell home, Hamilton House, give them 343,000, 339,000, 343, 393, 3393. Sorry, I'm sorry, 3393. 343, 339. 339.
339? Okay.
Yeah.
343339.
34,339. Correct. And the balance is 412,428. We'll go to the YMCA, and that both of them gets the funding and the 200,000 or so dollar amount that they were able to cover on their own with from different funding sources. I think that would cover it. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Avedisian. Anyone else?
I was going to approach it a little bit differently, but I think it'll all kind of balance out once we have our discussion. I was going to do the same with Essentia and YMCA full amounts. And then I was going to, and I don't know if this creates a problem, so I welcome input from my fellow committee members, but I was going to take the balance and split it between Campbell and YWCA.
You want Irish to punch in some numbers there for you?
Can we make the spreadsheet a little bit larger like we did last time?
You could.
Can I do that on my own?
Yes, from the side of the screen, there is a bar. You can go to plus, click on the plus, and it will enlarge it for you.
If you're in the full application, not the web browser.
Oh, I just lost you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Okay, I'm back. Yes. No, thank you. Okay, I'm not going to keep trying. It's all right. I can't figure it out right now.
On the side of the screen where you see the spreadsheet,
yes.
When you look at the computer on your, there is a bar that you can plus or minus the screen size.
Okay, I'm there. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. Okay.
Just the last comment I'll make to mine, which is obviously it differs in the amounts that the other two organizations gave in terms of phasing which pieces that they could do by when. So they would have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what 377,000 buys them within their project, and hopefully they would both find a way to come up with a balance to finish off their projects, not come back for a second phase.
From the detail of the construction cost that I see, just the thought, I think with these dollars that you recommended, Mr. Armenia, they can definitely pick and choose their projects. It's in a way detailed and so many areas of construction. I'm sure they can fulfill most of them, and not to have it unfinished just will be the remaining, because it's so many, both agencies have so many different areas: kitchen, bathrooms, floors, inside, outside.
Yeah, and I know Mr. Dell was throwing out 1 and 5 and 7,
right.
But I think at the end of the day, this gets them close enough, and hopefully they can raise the balance and get the project done and not try and phase it.
Ms. Gabrielian, how are we doing?
I'm fine. I'm actually, looking at it, and I like the approach. And hold on, I'm gonna have to put my glasses on. I'm right in between, I guess. Here we go. I think that approach of equitably, fully funding, first of all, Essentia, and fully funding the YMCA for their projects, and then taking the balance, just as Mr. Armenian said, and dividing it gets us to within $10,000 of the Campbell House Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 and Phase 2 add up to $387,890. So that's amazing. I think they can either pick and choose or find $10,000 worth of fundraising to connect, to complete Phase 1 and 2, and it gets the YWCA to within 234,551, and we said 225. She was around there. She was pretty positive that she could get her board to continue to fund it from their reserves or find other funding and continue with this important project. She's just $9,000 shy. So it's I think it's a very good approach. And I would say if you could fill mine in exactly like Mr. Armenian's, that would be, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So yeah, obviously, Ms. Peterson's and of course Nancy, I don't remember her last name. They both were very great to be able to give us their minimums that they can work with, and as I mentioned earlier, since both of them have detailed construction projects from kitchens to floorings to windows, roofs, and so on and so forth. And I don't think one project will affect the other one, meaning if they do the roof, they can wait for the kitchen and so on and so forth. So it's great that with the funding recommendation we have, they still can get majority of it done. As far as YMCA, absolutely, the cost of construction has gone up. And this is a year before the new projects that we have with Campbell and YWCA is based on the new pricings, obviously, with the inflation that we have. Definitely we want to close the YMCA's books. And as far as Essentia, as you guys mentioned, and we talked about it, discussed it, yes, it is a little bit high, but hopefully this would be something that the future agencies can definitely consider all these details when they're submitting budgets, that we do look at everything. Obviously, time is short. We don't express ourselves on all the recommendations, why we do how we do, because it's short in time, but we do go into every one line and item and considerations that we have, and it's a accumulated decision we come up with by looking at every detail. I'm gonna actually keep it short and copy same as Mr. Armenia's decision. I'm happy with splitting the two. As I mentioned, both of them were very much appreciated for them to give us what they can take, and this helps us. Obviously, 4 agencies, that helps also. In the past, we had bigger ones that we had more difficulty. So I agree to this. So I don't know if Mr. Abedisian wants to change, or it doesn't matter in this case. We can just put a motion and vote, or if you want to change it, Mr. Abedisian, for the records, it's up to you.
Yeah, well, I'm okay with that. The reason I did it this way, in the sense of their dollar amounts, the difference between their dollar amounts and 200,000 that they said that they can work with. So I came up with that numbers that's closer to their 200,000, whatever, 10,000, 20,000 up and down. That's why, or else it's the concept and the idea, it's pretty much the same. Getting it closer to the 400,000 on the YMCA. That's why YWCA. That's why I was trying to get that, give them that 200,000 basically.
Okay, thank you. Anyone want?
Either way around, I'm fine with the split of 50 exactly. I'm fine with that also.
So Iris, I think Mr. Avedisian recommended to change his recommendation and match with us. Am I correct, Mr. Avedisian?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anyone wants to put a motion? Oh, Mr. Armenia.
I just wanted to clarify one thing on the Essencia for consideration before we go to a motion so that we capture it. I would like to suggest or adopt Ms. Alexanian's suggestion that we shift 5,000 to cover the full drywall and painting costs and have their leverage be their staff time. That way, because that's a little bit more fluid. That way, you know, they can kind of deal with that on a staff level in terms of the amount of staff time that it takes to manage the project, but at least the amounts we've put in are specifically allocated to specific items. So,
can we do that? Staff.
You can, and if whoever makes a motion can make it part of the motion, it'll go on the record as such.
Shall I make a motion to move us forward?
Mr. Armenia.
Okay, I make a motion that we allocate the funding as outlined in the spreadsheet, which is full funding for $31,840 for Essencia, but with a condition that 5,000 of that cost that was allocated to project management and supervision be shifted to a total of 10,000 for drywall and painting repair as part of the project, thus reducing 5,000 from their project management and supervision costs. And then 377,883.50 for the Campbell Center Hamilton House renovation project, 179,000 for the full amount of the YMCA Glendale project, and $377,883.50 for the YWCA of Glendale project.
Anyone second that?
I'll second it.
Oh, thank you. Okay, roll call, please.
Certainly. Committee members, Armenian,
Yes.
Avedisian,
Yes.
Kazarian is absent, Vice Chair Quinones, Gabrielian,
Yes.
and Chair Garibian.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
I'm sorry. Who was it?
Iris, we now need to vote on the contingency, but before we do so, I did want to bring to the committee's attention, when considering the contingency funding plan, I know this was asked on Friday as well. I kind of plugged in some numbers, and it looks like if we were to go up or down, average, it would be about $30,000 either up or down, depending on what we get. So in years past, I did kind of an average, and we're looking at either getting $30,000 more for CIP or possibly a reduction of $30,000. So that's something to consider when making your decision.
Go ahead, Mr. Armenia.
My suggestion on the approach for this, given everything we just talked about, is that up or down, that those amounts, that the difference be split between the Campbell House project and the YWCA. And the reason is, if it's up, those are the only two projects we have not fully funded. So therefore they would get additional amounts split evenly between the two. If the amounts were to come in lower, then again, those are the projects that have the largest amount of funding. So I would propose that, let's say if it were 30,000, you would take 15 away from each, which is still, they're still getting more than what they said was the kind of like a minimum when we had the discussions, because they each came in and around, under 200,000. So I think that would be an equitable way to deal with and give staff some guidance in terms of how to deal with. Hopefully the problem is on the positive side, in which case we can fund them a little bit more. But if for some reason it's not, then I think, again, those are the two largest projects that we are funding. That's kind of my suggestion in terms of approach. I don't know what others think.
Anyone else who has a different idea? Ms. Gabriel, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to just second that suggestion. I don't have a different.
Okay. Mr. Avedisian, yes.
I just want to make sure I understood it correctly. Mr. Armenian, you were saying that whatever the difference is taken out or added to the two largest projects, right? The Hamilton House and the YWCA.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Okay, I second that.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
All right. Iris, can we take a vote on this?
Sure. I apologize. Who made the motion?
So I made the motion. I'll restate it for the record. So I make a motion that staff be directed that if there is a additional funding that comes available, that be split evenly between the Campbell House project and the YWCA project. If there is less funding available than we currently than that was currently stated, again, that amount be evenly deducted between the Campbell House project and the YWCA project.
Yeah, it's only a sensible thing to do. So I appreciate it. Okay, Iris, let's move on with the vote.
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Avedisian,
Yes.
Kazarian is absent. Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielian,
Yes.
and Chair Garibian.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Item 4 is oral communications. We don't have any callers. Item 5, committee staff comments.
Anyone? Any comments?
Just say that thank you again to staff for pulling this all together and also giving us good counsel along the way as we've drilled down on some of the items. So really appreciate all your work, and of course all the work that is to come, which is in helping these organizations kind of manage the funding allocations and getting the work done. They're all wonderful organizations that do very important work in our community, and your efforts are also part of that great work. So thank you very much. And thank you to my fellow committee members as well for the healthy discussion that we had.
Thank you.
Mr. Avedisian?
With echoing with Mr. Armenian, my colleague, again, staff, thank you very much. You guys really make our job so easy. Besides bringing more budget in, everything else makes it so easy. All the packages, everything that we get, all the documents, the details, it's really, and the directions that you give us. It makes us very work easier, and we can come to a good conclusion at the end. I thank for our committee members, my colleagues, who are working together for the last few years, and we're doing an awesome job. I think as much as we can. We're all heartbroken at the end because we can't fund everyone, but then again, we do collaborate and do a pretty good job to getting it all, to bring it to the end. And also, I'm not sure why Mr. Ghazarian was not with us this meetings, these last 2 days. I hope everything is well with him, whatever reason that he's not with us. So looking forward to see him at the next meeting. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for all the organizations that applied. Keep on doing what you do best.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo all those sentiments. Great teamwork from both staff and colleagues. And that's it. I'll keep it short. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, once again, thank you, obviously. And just want to say, I don't know if you guys feel the same, but when I have the staff, somehow I feel the security around me when I have them. It gives me that comfort level that I can be a lot more comfortable on working on the recommendation, listening, just knowing the staff is there. I don't know why, but I get that feeling. So I appreciate for everything you guys do, for every questions we have and answers to clarify, to keep us in line and straight, obviously. So thank you, staff. Thank you, all the agencies, and for their understanding to know that, hey, it's like you help me, I help you. They can reduce their funding knowing the funds are less. And I appreciate that they're the bigger person stepping up doing that. As far as Mr. Gazarian, unfortunately, he called me. It's a personal reasons he couldn't be present. He is physically fine, so I'll pass the message to him for your concern. But yeah, for personal reasons, he couldn't join us. Thanks again. And just, I don't know if this is, I know we're towards the end of it, something that we need to discuss now or later on how to do these packages. Definitely the email format would be much better, at least in my case, even though we have it in the paper format. My email format, somehow, if it's it's categorized, it's easier to flip between back and forth of the pages. But that's just something that if we can do in future, it'd be great. Thanks again, and I guess Mr. Alexandrian, Ms. Alexandrian, you had something to say?
Chair, you mean I was just going to respond to your request. We are actually looking at some sort of a software to see if we could do this electronically. So we're hopeful that by the next cycle, we'll be able to allow the agencies to even apply through some sort of a system. So we're hoping to have a solution to that, and maybe we can get you access to be able to log in and look at all of that. But hopefully next year. Thank you for all that you do too. So thank you to the committee for your guidance.
Thank you so much. I guess we're adjourned, Iris.
If I may, I just wanted to make apologies to the committee. I just wanted to make a few updates and comments. We are going to be posting the committee recommendations, Friday's recommendations and today's recommendations on the city's webpage. It'll be posted by the end of this week. We are also planning our community meeting now. It is going to be the public's turn to review your recommendations, make public comment. We are tentatively looking at Wednesday, April 13th. We're in a unique situation. We are now reopened. We're back for in-person meetings, and we are going to coordinate that meeting most likely at the Pacific Park Community Center on April 13th at 7 p.m. It's tentative at this point, but we are working on it. We are also tentatively scheduled for the City Council Housing Authority meeting for May 24th. We're pushing it back this year due to the waiting the results of the final funding recommendations from the federal government. So that is why we're postponing it a little bit further out. So May 24th, 3 p.m., tentatively scheduled for City Council Housing Authority meeting. Thank you all for reviewing those proposals. I know it's very tedious, but we do appreciate that you take the time and review them. Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you to my colleagues. Oh my God, one of the reasons I have to say that the two meetings we had went a lot smoother, and I spoke a lot less because they asked all the best questions. There was no questions for me to ask. They covered it by the time my turn came. So thank you to all my colleagues for all the great questions. It made my job easier this year. Thank you, and I guess we are adjourned at 11:02.
Thank you, Chair Garibian.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.